A frantic 911 call reports a bloody scene upstairs. A man claims he just shot an intruder who was stabbing his wife. Yet while 2 people bleed to death in the master bedroom, the caller's 4-year-old daughter sits in the basement, perfectly safe, having been moved out of the house and then hidden away before the violence began. The man on the phone was Brendan Banfield. As a criminal investigator and federal agent for the IRS, he was trained in crime scene processing and investigative techniques. He used this background to immediately take control of the situation, projecting the authority of an officer who had just saved his wife. His story placed the focus on 2 victims: his wife, Christine, a pediatric intensive care nurse dedicated to saving lives, and Joseph Ryan, a man Banfield claimed was a random predator who had entered their home to kill. While the 911 call described a frantic emergency, the presence of an unharmed child and an intentionally unlocked front door suggested a sequence of events far more organized than a sudden home invasion. The groundwork for this organization started with the hiring of Juliana Peres Magalhães. At 21, she was a foreign au pair brought into the home to provide childcare. Her arrival created a severe power imbalance that Banfield began to exploit, eventually starting an affair with his young live-in employee. As the relationship grew, Banfield began viewing his marriage as a logistical hurdle. He refused to undergo a standard divorce, fearing that Christine would emerge in a better financial position and that he would lose sole custody of their daughter. To solve this problem, the conspirators began looking for an outside third party they could cast as a villain. They targeted Joseph Ryan, a martial arts practitioner whose participation in adult role-play subcultures made him a perfect logistical tool for a staged crime. This transition from unfaithful husband to conspirator highlights the use of instrumental violence, a mindset where human beings are treated as disposable assets to solve a personal problem. Using Christine's own laptop, the pair created a profile on the adult networking site FetLife under the pseudonym Anastasia 9. They populated the account with edited photos of Christine and began soliciting participants for a violent sexual fantasy. By requesting a scenario involving a knife and restraints, they ensured that their target would arrive with the tools necessary to frame him, effectively delivering the props for their own crime scene. On the morning of the killings, Banfield told his wife he had an early work meeting that could lead to a promotion, a claim his boss later testified was false. Instead, he waited at a nearby McDonald's for a call from Juliana, who signaled him the moment Joseph Ryan entered the home. When Ryan walked into the bedroom believing he was meeting a consenting partner, the pair sprung the trap. Banfield shot Ryan in the head with his service weapon, and then used the knife Ryan had brought to stab Christine multiple times in the neck. This coordinated morning was designed to establish a heroic husband narrative, framing a lethal ambush as a desperate act of self-defense. While Banfield's story relied on his law enforcement status, homicide detectives quickly found that the physical scene did not align with his version of an active struggle. Bloodstain analysis provided the first contradiction. Christine's blood dripped onto Ryan's hands from above, meaning he was incapacitated before the stabbing. Further, cast-off blood on Banfield's jeans formed an arc, placing him directly behind the murder weapon's motion. The 911 calls added another layer of suspicion. Juliana hung up twice before finally completing the call, a delay that ensured Christine's injuries would be fatal by the time first responders arrived. These forensic contradictions suggest Banfield relied on his professional status to shield the scene from scrutiny, assuming his narrative would override the physical evidence he left behind. After 19 months of investigation, the plot finally unraveled when Juliana Peres Magalhães accepted a manslaughter plea deal. In exchange for her testimony, she detailed the months of planning and the reality of what happened in that bedroom. Prosecutors framed Banfield's actions through the dark triad, an intersection of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These traits provided the capacity for the instrumental violence required to treat his family as obstacles to be removed. Banfield's own trial testimony illustrated this pathology. He claimed that after sustaining 7 stab wounds that severed her airway, his wife was still able to speak and tell him, "I love you." Medical experts testified that this was a physiological impossibility. This testimony showed a man attempting to use a spoken narrative to override biological facts, maintaining a specific version of reality even when it conflicted with basic human anatomy. The trial also highlighted the complexity of modern forensics, specifically regarding the digital data found on the couple's devices. One detective argued that because the FetLife activity happened within seconds of Christine using her own Facebook and work email, she must have been the one in control of the account. However, the prosecution argued that this synchronization was a deliberate part of the plot. By using the devices while Christine was present but distracted, the conspirators were manufacturing a digital alibi for themselves and a digital motive for her. In February 2026, a jury rejected Banfield's version of events. He was convicted on all counts, resulting in a mandatory life sentence, while Juliana received the maximum 10-year penalty for her role in the killings. The Banfield case demonstrates the limit of calculated control. Even a highly organized plot can unravel when the architect's lack of empathy blinds them to the relentless objectivity of forensic science. In the end, the evidence refused to